Morning, guys. We're on Matthew 11, reading from verse 1 to 6. Verse 1, when Jesus had finished giving instructions to his 12 disciples, he departed from there to teach and preach in their cities. Now when John was imprisoned, he heard the works of Christ. He sent word by his disciples. And so this is John the Baptist, the one that is the most godly man that ever lived, as Jesus goes on to say a bit further down. He's the one, the forerunner. He's the one the prophecies spoke about. He's the one who was hurt in Mary, that the Holy Spirit jumped. So he's a godly man who's been locked up in prison for challenging Herod in his marriage. But here's someone who's doubting. We all have moments of doubting our faith, doubting who Jesus is. And so he sends word by his disciples, is this really the Messiah that we expected? I mean, he's the one who's anointed Jesus, whose sandals he's not worthy to untie. And he's having, in one sense, some doubts. However, we can understand why when we understand what's happening here. It goes on to say, and he said to him, are you the expected one, or shall we look for someone else? Are you the Messiah? He's just questioning. And you must understand, when we look at John the Baptist, we go back to Matthew 3, what was his message? He came and he said, I'm going to baptize with you with the Holy Spirit and with fire. And he goes on to explain that fire. That fire is that separation of the wheat and the chaff, the separation where the sin of the world has come. He's talking about judgment. He comes in verse 10 of Matthew 3. He says, the axe is at the root. Every tree does not bear fruit. It will be cut down and thrown into the fire. And then going on to verse 11 of Matthew 3, he says, I'll baptize you with the Holy Spirit and fire. And then he goes on to say in verse 12, his winnowing fork is the hand, and he will clear the threshing floor and gather his wheat into the barn, and the chaff he will burn with unquenchable fire. So he's coming with fire and expecting Christ to come to Jerusalem and to come as this king and to judge the world with fire. And now he sees Jesus, gentle, mild, going around the Prince of Peace, and he's not doing, I suppose, what he expected him to do. And so he's got this question in his mind. So verse 4, Jesus answered him and said to him, go and report to John what you have heard and seen. Verse 5, the blind receive sight, and the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the poor have preached the gospel to them, have had the gospel preached them. And just that last bit, these are direct prophecies from Isaiah that John the Baptist would have known. And when he hears this, and that's all that Jesus had to say, he would have been absolutely convinced and reminded that this is the Messiah, with absolutely no doubt. Someone who can convert, not like the pretenders we see today. A pretender leg grows. There's people that are absolutely blind. These are John's disciples have witnessed the blind seeing, the deaf, the lepers being cleansed. And these would have come from Isaiah, for instance, 29 verse 18. In that day the deaf shall hear the words of the book, and out of their gloom and darkness the eyes of the blind will see. Isaiah 29:18. In the day the deaf shall hear the words of the book, and out of the gloomness and the darkness the eyes of the blind shall see. Repeated these things. Verse Isaiah 61. The Lord has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. There's a direct prophecy from that he's just mentioned to John the Baptist. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted. And so these prophecies are coming true. Isaiah 35, 5-6. The eyes of the blind shall be opened, the ears of the deaf unstopped. Then shall the lame man leap like a deer, and the tongue of the mute shall sing for joy, and the waters will break forth in the wilderness. And so these were prophecies that John the Baptist, Isaiah, he would have known Isaiah well. And Jesus is just reminding him that I am the one who opens the eyes. I have control over every single thing. I am the one. And so going down to verse 6, and blessed is he who does not take offense of me. And so we need to accept Christ Sometimes we misunderstand what's going on. In fact, last night we were just chatting about that Jesus is the Prince of Peace, and he's come to heal the brokenhearted. And yet we just read last week that he says, I am the one who comes with a sword, and I have come to divide up families, and I've come to bring and sometimes we see this division, and we see this heartbreak, and we see families get separated because of him, and we get confused. But we mustn't get offended. He knows what he's doing. He's coming with the sword. He comes with judgment, but he's also gentle. He's also the peacemaker. And depending on the situation, we need to understand and have much wisdom. But we must never reject Christ, and we must always accept the word as it is spoken. And so even the most godly men, like John the Baptist, can have moments where they have to question, are you the Messiah?